Whirlwind in Budapest. In Eastern Europe after World War II, unpopular communist regimes settled. After the early uprisings, the seemingly successful Hungarian Revolution drew attention to the country. Images of the protesters throwing down the Stalin statue or the Red Star abandoned in the Western media. For most, it seemed that a handful of people fought the army of a superpower, but the reality was more complex. The most important pillars in the Communist Party were the security agencies overseen by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Despite this, their personnel were poorly trained for police duties and were incapable of riot control. The largest of the armed forces was the People's Army, but it was under reorganization, and the conscription of the fall personnel has not happened yet. Seeing the course of events, the Special Corps were being prepared for intervention. The Soviet units in the country were also transferred here. All this, however, proved insufficient against the people, who were fed up with terror. Though RVH carried out several massacres, it dissolved in the revolution's early days. The police of Budapest also fell into chaos. Border guards tried to stay out of the events despite participating in volleys. The unmotivated personnel of the Hungarian People's Army was more and more confused by the opposing orders of the government, the party, and the High Command. They were primarily used as protective troops. Their passivity was further strengthened because the rioters targeted mostly Soviet and RVH forces. Nonetheless, violent clashes between protesters and soldiers happened. The attitude of military units heavily depended on their commander. Some fired at the protesters. Some joined their cause. In the meanwhile, the Special Corps did not dally. Instead, the units marched in Budapest. Their tactics were based on the experiences of the 1953 Berlin riots. Tank columns marched on the city's main streets, demonstrating their vastly superior power. Even this, however, proved inefficient to hold the city. The charged lads of Pest inflicted heavy casualties to the tanks, who patrolled the streets without proper infantry escort. These losses led the Soviets to abandon the town, their numbers replaced by Hungarian troops. However, in Moscow, the decision about the intervention was already born. Among the insurgents were young workers, students, children, some soldiers, and even a few shady figures. The more successful groups, led by charismatic leaders, held easily defensible hubs. They had gas stations nearby for Molotov cocktails and a kitchen for feeding. Moreover, the groups did not cooperate, so there was no central command which the Soviets could take out to break the resistance. There were even more factors contributing to their success. They grabbed their weapons from factories, barracks, and abandoned police stations. They made up for their lack of anti-tank weaponry with Molotov cocktails and daring. They had intimate knowledge of the land, and they could rely on the help of the population. The older fighters still had fighting experience from World War II, and the younger ones had performed conscript service. Even the children had preliminary training in school. Soviet reinforcements continuously arrived. Meanwhile, the People's Army created defensive areas from the Budapest garrison, though they fell short of the Soviets in both numbers and quality. The Soviets were more thorough this time. They occupied the most important air bases, apprehended the Hungarian military leadership, and surrounded the barracks. Then, Operation Whirlwind had begun. The Hungarian High Command forbid fighting to avoid bloodshed, and the Soviets disarmed the Hungarian army. After this, they moved against the known centers of resistance.
Ma hajnalban a szovjet csapatok támadást indítottak külvárosunk ellen, azzal a nyilvánvaló szándékkal, hogy megdöntsük a törvényes magyar demokratikus kormányt. Csapataink harcban állnak. A kormány a helyén van.